I want to give you a little history on the initiative. 26 years ago, we had a vision for this conference series, namely to bring the world closer together through food. And each year, to gather leading culinary talent here at CIA Napa Valley from or representing food cultures near and far, from East and South Asia, from Europe, the Mediterranean and Middle East, from Africa, from Latin America, and across the United States. Over the years, we've gone to great lengths to reach deep into world food cultures to find the real masters of flavor and traditional techniques. We have worked to level the playing field in terms of perceptions in our industry and in the media of world cuisines. If you all remember going back to the 80s or the 90s, if you're old enough to remember that, and to end the sense of the hierarchy of great, quote-unquote, great cuisines that persisted for so long. And finally, to underscore that there is delicious, amazing food all over the world. We have also worked over many years to broaden our collective view of where to look for culinary expertise in countries around the world and who to elevate in terms of recognition. At our very first conference 26 years ago, we brought an entire family of brilliant village cooks here from Oaxaca. Yes, over the years, we featured hundreds of top chefs, many Michelin three-star chefs, many world's 50 best chefs, and we've loved having all of them with us. But we have also spotlighted street food vendors and in-country cookbook authors and cultural authorities from the four corners of the globe. American barbecue specialists, soba noodle experts from Tokyo, South Indian home cooks from Kerala, tapas and meze masters from Spain and from Turkey, and so many more. For 25 years, chefs and business leaders in our industry have gathered here at CIA Napa Valley to listen, to learn, and to taste these traditions from these custodians of world culinary heritage, and to see how they may bring these flavors and culinary insights back to their customers and adapt them for their businesses. The CI is proud to have been a driving force for 2.5 decades in helping to broaden the flavor and cultural horizons of our industry and facilitating literally thousands of personal connections among chefs and culinary experts around the world through this pioneering conference series. Our theme for Worlds of Flavor this year is Borders, Migration, and the Evolution of Culinary Tradition. At the same time that our U.S. industry has gained greater knowledge of broader global flavors and culinary frameworks over the years, these cuisines and the cooks and chefs who represent them, either from abroad or from American immigrant communities, have also themselves changed and evolved in what they do and what they create. Continued migration and connectivity, including social media, are reshaping how we think about world cuisines and culinary traditions, and have often blurred the lines between and among cuisines and long-held understandings of culturally based flavor profiles and menu concepts. Historically, the American restaurant and food service industry has been incredibly welcoming to immigrants from all over, offering so many a chance to put their entrepreneurial spirit and skills into action and express their unique sensibilities about food and culture, their communities, and their ancestral homelands. As we look ahead, with demographics shifting and evolving and expectations of a new generation beginning to dominate the market, how do restaurant operators, long-term industry veterans, and newcomers alike prepare for this changing world? This year, we'll examine how changing migration patterns and understandings of tradition are shifting the landscape of what diners expect and the delicious new world that awaits us. Our 2024 theme of migration, borders, migration, and the evolution of culinary tradition is indeed a timely one, as we welcome guest chefs representing or from Poland, the UK, Turkey, Spain, Mexico, Korea, and immigrant communities and restaurant operations across the United States. We have a dynamic program coming up with presentations and cooking demonstrations, panel discussions, breakout sessions, and lots of opportunities to network with one another. And each day, our World Marketplace will offer a rich spectrum of opportunities for tasting and culinary adventures. So on behalf of the CIA, our entire strategic initiatives team that's based here at Copia, and all of us in CIA California, the Copia staff, we're excited that you're here, and we look forward to a wonderful 2 to 3 days together. Thank you very much. Now, putting on Worlds of Flavor is not a cheap venture. And so we couldn't do this without our sponsors. And so I really want to acknowledge our sponsors and some of our lead sponsors, particularly at the outset here, who have made this possible. And so what I'd like to do is to introduce, we have 3 platinum sponsors, and I'd like to have them come up and meet all of you and give me a chance to thank them. So our first sponsor is Kikkoman, and represented by Vivian Se'e, Senior Specialist for Food Service. Vivian. Our second platinum sponsor is Foods from Wines from Spain, who's been a big part. By the way, Kikkoman has sponsored every single Worlds of Flavor conference for 26 years. So. And almost with the same track record is Foods and Wines from Spain, who's been a terrific partner with the CIA for many, many years. Mercedes Lamami, Associate Director, please come up. And finally, another one of our really fabulous partners over the years. They have sponsored our digital media series that I'm sure many, many of you have seen, that has allowed our digital media team to get out and film all over the world, and again, complement what we're doing here with our Worlds of Flavor conference and bring those cultures much closer. And we continue to love our partnership with Unilever Food Solutions, represented today with Rudy Smith, Corporate Chef, National Accounts, and Brandon Collins, Corporate Executive Chef. So those are our platinum sponsors, and then we have a special educational grant from California Grown, which we deeply appreciate. Our premium gold sponsor is Pomoan, a longtime partner of the CIA. Again, these are many longtime partners of the CIA. Rationale, we appreciate your support. Our silver sponsor is California Walnuts, the Dole Company, Nestle, Professional Solutions, Northern Canola Growers Association, and our bronze sponsors, who you can see here, our supporting sponsors, our contributing sponsor, and our research collaborator, and our corporate sponsors, and our premier media sponsors. So let's have a big round of applause for all of our supporters. And with that, it gives me great pleasure to bring up and welcome to the podium Jennifer Brechner, who is our Director of Programs and Special Projects, to kick us off. Jennifer?
So it is an absolute honor to be here today to kick off the 26th Annual Worlds of Flavor Conference and Festival. I stand here before you as the Program Director of WWOOF, and on behalf of our passionate and dedicated strategic initiatives team, who, as I mentioned, we've worked over the course of 10 months to bring you this program. And we are so excited that you're here. We're excited. I can feel the enthusiasm. And we hope that you enjoy the program as much as we hope you do. It is a joy, an honor, and a privilege to get to curate an endeavor like this, to work with some of the most talented, important, and exciting chefs and presenters joining us from around the world to bring the theme of borders, migration, and the evolution of culinary tradition to life. This theme manages to be both timely and historical as we understand how the movement of people across borders, whether voluntary or not, affects our foodways. The theme is a broad one, and over the next 3 days, we'll look at how migration changes traditional cuisines and even sometimes create new ones. How chefs adapt their traditional cuisine to a new place and new ingredients. Changes in attitude between generations and what is authentic to them. How so many chefs around the world are unearthing food traditions and sharing them with new audiences. And how the present and future of food and beverage is impacted by climate migration. It's a broad one. And how chefs, farmers, and companies are responding. Along the way, you'll hear important discussions about flavor, technique, and with Gen Z and Gen Alpha, who are composed of a higher percentage of people with at least one immigrant parent than any generation before them, you'll get insight into how future menus will evolve. Along the way, you will taste a lot of delicious food, because learning by tasting is important, but also just tasting is important and fun. And you'll have ample opportunity to meet people, from fellow attendees to guest chefs and speakers to sponsors and partners. We hope you have a fantastic time. So now we'll head into General Session 1, Generational Differences, Personalizing Traditional Cuisine. First up from London is Jordan Ezra King. Jordan is a recipe developer, professionally trained chef, and storyteller. His cooking draws heavily on regional French and Italian cuisine, both from his heritage and classical training as a chef, and through his writing and podcasting. He aims to unpack the origins of iconic and traditional foods. Here, he'll dig into the migration patterns of ingredients in an iconic Italian dish. Jordan will be followed by Keanu Moju of Los Angeles, who is a Kenyan, Nigerian, and American author, recipe developer, producer, director, and video host. Keanu's culinary identity draws on her Kenyan and Nigerian heritage, her upbringing in the melting pot of California, and her travels abroad. She is the founder of Jikoni Recipe Archive, a nonprofit organization that celebrates the cuisines of Africa and the African foodways by documenting the legacy of cooks, both traditional and modern, while amplifying its vibrant food culture. She has just released a beautiful new book called Africali, Recipes from My Jikoni. Our last demo will be by Sakib Kaval and Norma Lissman, who are the renowned chef owners of the Masala y Maíz Group, an activist project in Mexico City that explores the migration of people, culinary techniques, political movements, and ingredients between South Asia, East Africa, and Mexico. The Masala y Maíz Group includes a nonprofit foundation championing workers' rights, a chef and artist residency program, a cooperative natural wine project, and the award-winning restaurants Masala y Maíz and Mari Gold. And as far as I hear, you'll soon see them on an episode of Chef's Table. So before I hand it over to Jordan Ezra King, I just want to remind you to submit your questions via Slido and to follow along with the recipes in the app. Thank you. Jordan?
Hello everybody. I'm just gonna, oh, there we go. Ooh, like one of the British villains in your Hollywood films. Oh, that's good. Okay, hello. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to kick things off. I'm very excited to make quite a simple dish today, but I'm really using it to illustrate a story that I'm telling. Let me go ahead and get my pan on. Perfect. Thank you, Chef. So I've come here to talk to you from London. Nice to be here in sunny California. And it is significant that I've come here from London. I think that where you're from, you know, whatever you do, where you're from really kind of shapes how you work and how you think about what you do. And as a cook coming from London, that's kind of really significant, because London's a big city. It's a big multicultural metropolitan city that's full of people from all over the world. And as a cook, that's really exciting. Even just as someone who likes to eat, that's really exciting, because you know, it kind of shapes you, it kind of molds you, it kind of completely sets out your worldview. I think when you kind of do what you do, it's very much representative of where you come from. So I'm coming here today as a cook from London, talking to you about a dish from Italy. We're making spaghetti and tomato sauce. And I'm going to do it in a way that you might not have seen before, but I'll talk to you a little bit about that at the end. For now, what I want to do is kind of dig into this dish a little bit and look at what it is and where it comes from and how it came to be. So that's kind of really my area of interest in food is trying to understand where things have come from, how a dish has come to be, what makes something traditional, what makes it a classic, right? So I'm going to pick, or I have picked this, which I think, spaghetti and tomato sauce is probably the most iconic of all Italian foods, right? It's kind of the archetypal, internationally known symbol of Italian cuisine, perhaps alongside pizza, and we'll touch again on that a little bit later. I've chosen this dish because I cook a lot of Italian food. I've got Italian family, Italian friends, and I spend a lot of time there. And one of the things that I'm particularly interested in with Italian food is all of the stories that go kind of behind what you eat. And Italian food is kind of particularly good for that because you have a lot of stories and a lot of origins, and they're all kind of quite fun and they're all kind of quite romantic. But it's also interesting because I think that a lot of the dishes in this cuisine, they feel old, they feel deeply rooted, they feel tied to the place, tied to Italy. And it's easy almost to imagine that they've always been there. You can imagine ancient Romans eating pasta and pizza sitting on the steps of the Pantheon. But in truth, a lot of those dishes are not. A lot of those dishes are not kind of these deep-rooted ancient things. They're actually quite modern, and they have come about as the result of migration, of a movement of ideas and ingredients and people that have led to form these traditions. I'm just going to move this. Yeah. There we go. Now I can cook and talk a little more easily. So, in London, we have lots of dishes that I think are quite representative of a city that is a big cultural melting pot. A lot of things that are perhaps quite unique to that city, to that place, and that are a real amalgamation of foods kind of coming together to combine in one place. I don't know if any of you have ever eaten like a doner kebab meat pizza, for example. They're pretty good at 3 a.m. after a few beers, but that's quite a representative dish of the kind of thing that I'm talking about that we have in London. And I love it. And those foods exist across quite a wide scale. On one hand you have things like that, and then on the other hand you have restaurants doing fine dining concepts where Italian food meets Japanese food, and people are pointing out the similarities between fritti and tempura, for example. So we have this wide spectrum of food and food cultures meeting each other in a way that I think is really exciting. We also have a lot of traditional restaurants, a lot of traditional cooking from all over the world. I think like a lot of big metropolitan cities, you have these kind of pockets of migration, pockets of different cultures from around the world, all kind of cooking their food. And that makes it a really exciting place to eat and to cook. And traditional food is kind of the thing that I've always been particularly interested in because of the stories behind the dishes, because of the stories that have made a dish become a tradition, that have rooted it into a culture. And for me, although I like to eat food from all over the world, although I'm fascinated in food from all over the world, my sort of, I suppose, professional area of interest is kind of Southern European food. It's what I'm comfortable with, it's what I'm familiar with, it's the food that I kind of ate growing up, it's the place that I spend a lot of time. And so that's what I kind of wanted to talk about today. And that's why I'm making this dish of spaghetti. Thank you. Oh, I've got oil all over my notes. Yeah, it's traditional. It's rustic. So spaghetti and tomato sauce. It's a dish that I like. It's a dish that everyone likes. It's a dish that's eaten all over the world. And I'm going to kind of try and quite quickly, very quickly, tell you the story of how that came to be. If we break down a dish like this into its two constituent components, you're kind of considering two things. You've got the present identity of a dish, which is kind of very firmly Italian. But I think when you talk about food, the present identity of a dish is fluid, and it can change. And the other thing that you have is the roots of the dish, right? Which are fixed kind of much more firmly in history. And with this dish, we've got kind of two constituent components. We've got the pasta and we've got the tomatoes. And I think the thing that's quite fascinating is that neither of those originate in Italy. So pasta is kind of the natural starting point. We're gonna talk about pasta and tomatoes. And pasta, it's a strange sentence to say. Pasta only arrived into Italy about 1,000 years ago, and it arrived into Italy with the Arab conquest of Sicily, so about 1,000 years ago. And even just thinking about that feels unusual, right? The idea of pasta arriving into Italy, but it's true. You have the ideas and the methodology for making pasta arriving into this island in the middle of the Mediterranean with the Arab conquest of Sicily. And I think it's important also to touch on the point here that an idea doesn't necessarily become history unless it meets the right conditions. It has to meet kind of favorable conditions that allow it to flourish, that allow it to kind of become something. And in Sicily, it met those conditions. The sun for growing durum wheat and the waterways for constructing mills that allowed that wheat to be milled into flour to make pasta. And so this is kind of the beginnings of pasta production as we know it today, about 1,000 years ago on the island of Sicily. And there are various kind of different and really interesting historic accounts of this, talking about pasta production, talking about how it was shipped across the Mediterranean. But it wasn't called pasta at this point. I think whenever you're looking into the history and the origins of a dish, the etymology is always a really fascinating place to start, the meaning of the name. It's kind of the beginning of the thread that you tug on, and it unravels this story about the dish that you're interested in. And with pasta, the first kind of documented name of pasta that we know today is itrie, which comes from the old Arabic word for string. If you think about kind of rolling out pasta, making a spaghetti, it kind of makes sense that they would have called it string. And we have evidence of this not just from Italy, where you still find pasta with the same kind of a derivative of the same name 1,000 years later today. So if you go to Salento in Puglia, in the south of Puglia, you find a dish called ciccherie itria, which tria, their name for the pasta, comes directly from itrie, this word from 1,000 years ago for string. It's still there 1,000 years later today, still being used for pasta. If you go to the other side of the Mediterranean, if you go to Portugal, then you find a dessert called alutria, which is like a kind of a sweet dessert made of vermicelli noodles with egg yolks and sugar and cinnamon. And that word's significant because tria, again, at the end there, is the same thing. It's the same word that comes from 1,000 years ago, from this word for string. So we kind of have the beginnings of pasta production and the export of pasta across the Mediterranean. And it works its way from Sicily up the Italian peninsula. And over 500-600 years, it takes on different shapes, different names, different significances to different people. And this really is kind of pasta flourishing. I think one thing that's quite interesting is that it didn't go the other way. So although the Arab conquest of Sicily brought this methodology to Italy, pasta really flourished there, but it didn't kind of necessarily return to where the people who brought it to Sicily came from. Which is just a kind of I suppose going back to that thing that we're talking about an idea taking hold in a particular place because it's the right place for it to happen. Now, at this point, we've had pasta for 600 years. It's gone from Sicily around the Mediterranean in slightly different shapes, slightly different forms. It's worked its way up through Italy, and it's become a real kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's become like a real key part of the Italian diet by this point. It's eaten really prolifically. And when pasta gets to Naples, it kind of finds a new spiritual home. It moves from Sicily and it arrives in Naples. And this is another place that pasta really flourishes, because Naples, and particularly Gragnano in Campania, it's a great place to make pasta. They find that the air coming in off the sea means that you can hang big racks of pasta and dry them really efficiently. And it's also a port city, so you can then take that pasta and you can export it around the Mediterranean. So we kind of had these things happening. And Naples becomes the epicenter of dried pasta production, and the Neapolitans become known as pasta eaters. Mangia macaroni, so macaroni being like a generic name for pasta at this point, not kind of specifically what we know it as today, but a more generic name for pasta, and the Neapolitans become known as pasta eaters. At the same time, same kind of era of history, we have the Spanish invasion of Latin America. And this is really significant. One of the most significant things, I think, to happen to all food that we eat anywhere in the world is what they call the Columbian exchange. So the Spanish bring tomatoes, potatoes, chilies, peppers from Latin America to the old world, so to Europe and Asia. And that's a wild thing to think about, you know. 400-500 years ago, Italian food didn't have any tomatoes in it, Indian food didn't have any chilies in it, British food didn't have any potatoes in it, until this moment in history. And they're all interesting stories, but we're focusing on tomatoes specifically. So the Spanish bring tomatoes to Spain, and they're grown as an ornamental plant for a couple of hundred years. Little red berries, nobody eats them. They make their way to Italy, and in the 1700s, we have the earliest examples of people in Italy eating tomatoes, which is not very long ago. You know, it's only a few hundred years ago that people started to eat tomatoes. And they started to eat them in Campania, so in and around Naples. So you can see where this is going. We've got Naples becoming the epicenter of dried pasta production in the country, and we've got the first evidence of tomatoes being eaten in the same place. And so up until that point, pasta had never been eaten with tomatoes because they didn't have them. If you look at old recipes for, you know, Bolognese-style ragu, for example, there's no tomatoes in it because there weren't any tomatoes. And so what we have is these two things kind of coming together at the same time in the same place. And pasta, which was previously eaten, you know, only with cheese, begins to be eaten with tomatoes as well. And so by the 1800s, this is kind of like a firm fixture within Neapolitan cuisine, and it's starting to spread through Italy. And then we have our next really significant migration, because we've got pasta coming from North Africa to Italy, we've got tomatoes coming from Latin America to Italy via Spain, and now we have the migration of a large number of central and southern Italians to the east coast of the US in the 1800s, 1900s. And this is what really puts pasta and tomato sauce, but also things like pizza, on the map and really globalizes them. You know, pasta and tomato sauce was not a popular dish eaten anywhere outside of southern Italy 200 years ago. But its movement, its transfer, its migration to the US is what really, really changes that. What really puts it onto a kind of global stage. And that's when it kind of spreads around the world. So that's why, you know, for example, pasta is the globalized food that it is today. That's why everybody has a version of spaghetti and tomato sauce, their own way of adapting it, their own way of cooking it, of kind of spicing up, jazzing it up, and doing their own thing with it. That's really kind of the reason for its international fame, is via America. And the same with things like pizza. There's some amazing kind of ideas here. You could eat a pizza in New York before you could eat a pizza in Milan. We're good. You could eat, because of the regionality of Italian food, because of how kind of Neapolitan that dish was until it migrated to the US. That's what globalized it. That's what made it kind of, what it is today. And I like that. I like that. I like how much this dish has moved. I like how its two constituent components come from far outside Italy, but they came together there, and they became this kind of iconic symbol of Italian cuisine. And that they then moved again to America to become the dish that is kind of famous and beloved all over the world today. Very quickly before I finish, the way that I'm cooking this pasta, which will hopefully be done in the next minute and a half, is in quite a modern style. I thought it would be nice to tell a brief story of the dish historically and then kind of bring it full circle by making it in a style that's kind of emerged out of restaurants in Italy in the past 20 years or so. So this way of making pasta risotata is in the style of a risotto. So I'm adding my liquid as I go, and I'm stirring. And what's happening is that as the water boils, the starch is being released from the pasta. And it's cooking in its own sauce. So it's absorbing the tomatoes and the flavor of the garlic and the basil. And it's giving its starch back to the sauce. And what you end up with, maybe not in the next 40 seconds, but let's see, is a very creamy, rich, and kind of glossy sauce. And it's a lovely way to cook pasta. I've done it like this. I thought that people might like to kind of try cooking it like this at home. It's very simple and very tasty. I think you end up with something that's very familiar. It tastes like spaghetti pomodoro, but there's something slightly different to it. It's a kind of a new way of thinking about the dish. So we've kind of come full circle from pasta's kind of pretty humble international origins right through to a new way that they're still making the same dish with the same ingredients in the same place today. I actually thought I only had 2 seconds left. I had 1 minute and 2 seconds left, so I'm a little bit early. What else have I got to talk about? So I was born in. No, I'm joking. I kind of smashed through it. I think we covered everything. Good stuff. Thank you so much. We're getting there.
Well, maybe while you finish that up or plate that up, we're going to welcome Keanu Moju and look forward to her demo.
I'm actually just going to move out of the way.
I mean, if it doesn't finish, I'll just snack on it. You know, I can look after it for you. Going? We're going. We're both up here together. Hi, everyone. Hi. I'm like, there's so many of y'all, but I don't hear y'all. Good afternoon. Hi, I'm Keanu Moju. I am actually, because in my correction they said I'm from LA. I live in LA, but I am from the Bay, from Oakland. So it is great to be here. I am the author of the newly published cookbook, Africali, which is really the best way. Everyone has their cookbook, and they say it's, you know, I put my heart into it and all that. This book is just what I love to cook. It's as simple as that. So today I'm going to walk you through probably the dish that has carried through this book tour for the past couple months. And before we get into cooking, I'm going to give you a little bit of overview of what the book is, who I am, and then I'll walk you through the dish. But hopefully you will make it. I know a lot of folks love dining out, but I am very much in the business of culinary education. I love the idea that we can feed ourselves and we can make wonderful things at home. And so regardless of your culinary background, I feel very confident you can pull this off. So Africali is really not just a book title, but who I am. My mom, who's front row and center, is from Kenya. Hi, Mom. And my dad's from Nigeria, so that's the Afra half. And then the Cali is, as I told you, I'm born and raised in the Bay. And the thing is about being Californian is we are very fortunate to eat everything all the time. So the recipes in Africali are inspired by my heritage, but also my upbringing. And so this dish that we're making today, I call them lentil nuggets because they look like chicken nuggets. Let's keep it real. But they're actually inspired by a West African dish called akara. That's what they're called in Nigeria, which is a bean fritter, typically made with a black-eyed pea, but we use lentils. Because here's the thing, as much as I love great food, I will not suffer for great food. And to make akara, you have to skin black-eyed peas. This is labor I've done once in my life, and I said, never again. They're great, they're delicious, but we need to do something else. So and this is where the fun and joy of having parents from 2 different countries come in. Because my mom is from Kenya in East Africa, she will always have lentils in the pantry. So when we're thinking of like, how do people come up with recipes? It's really organic a lot of the time. You're making something, you look around at what's in your cupboard, and you're like, how about that? And so that's how this came to be for me. I looked at the lentils and I said, how about that? They require no skinning, and they worked really great. So that's how we got to this dish. So to start off, in a food processor, I have the red lentils that I just soaked and drained, and those are gonna go in. And so this part of the recipe is pretty classic of the Nigerian akara, which is just a fried bean fritter. So you can have it as like a breakfast food, a snack. Have you guys had falafel before? I'm introducing you to falafel's West African cousin, because they are kind of the same thing. So those go in along with some onions, just some red onion, and some habanero. And habanero is used a lot in Nigerian food. If you don't like spicy, you don't use the seeds, but we're really after the flavor of the chili here. And then this is just gonna go on and blend it. And it's gonna go, 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 go. And I'm gonna keep pureeing that until you get a mixture like so. I'll let the camera catch up before I move on. Donde guarda. And so the idea here is that you're blending until it's a homogeneous paste. You're blending until it's aerated, so they're light. No one likes dense anything. We are making food, not miniature hockey pucks. So blend it until it's very light, very fluffy. And this is where the fun part comes in. So this, more or less, even though we use the lentils, looks pretty much like how typical akara in Nigeria would look. Batter, it's like light pink. Have you ever seen that video of how chicken nuggets are made? Also, we're still in the chicken nugget land. This is what it looks like, just pink, fluffy paste. But, once again, having a lot of Kenyan heritage, I was lucky to spend a lot of my summers, you know, at summer holiday when you have from school, every other summer since I was 6 in Kenya. So really got to know those flavors, those techniques, and also when I'm cooking at home a lot and when I'm developing recipes, I'm very cognizant of what are those tiny little problems we all have and how can those recipes solve it. I think we've all bought herbs with great intentions and we'll maybe use a handful of it, wait for them to die, get to the bottom of the vegetable drawer. And so this is a really great dish to throw in all of them. Whatever soft herb you have in the fridge, it can go in here. Maybe not the rosemary, but we have chives, we have parsley, we have cilantro. It's just a great way to use those up. But I always tell people, if you make this dish at home, don't go to the store to buy one or the other. The idea is use what you have to season. And then I'll go in, so I did parsley, cilantro, and chives. And then I'm also gonna add in some diced peppers. Another thing with the book that I really tried to do was bring in that philosophy that we love here in California, where we love our veggies, and vegetables don't always have to be boring. And so this dish, in many versions of it, is kind of vegan, accidentally vegan is what they call it, or just naturally vegan, because it's just vegetables. We have our beans, onions, some fresh herbs, and then seasonings. A little turmeric, because that pink's gotta go. It's gotta go for me. So a little bit of turmeric just to add some color to it, and then seasoning. So akara can be seasoned in like many things, depending on whose house you go to, what vendor you go to, seasonings will vary. It's very common to use something like a dried shrimp, dried crayfish, and so I found that the easiest way to get that is through bouillon cubes. Companies like Knorr, they'll sell bouillon cubes in every flavor. So shrimp bouillon's really great. Chicken bouillon, if you have, I think we have chicken here today. And so it's gonna impart that little flavor, but you don't have to go hunting to a specialty food store to go find dried crayfish, but also, to keep it real, you gotta double bag them, because having dried crayfish in your pantry is very fragrant. So you have to make sure you have a jar to keep them in. So I like the bouillon cubes, because they fit right in there and they don't have too much trouble. And you just mix it up. And that's all it is. And so with this batter, I have some oil. This is like a shallow fry, just because it is really loose. Because a lot of folks are like, where's the flour? Where's the baking powder? Where are all these things? It's not needed because we blended up the beans, it's aerated, and so they're already naturally fluffy, so you don't have to add anything to it. And this is something that throughout my book tour, a lot of people asked of, what's the difference? Or is there any similarity between East African or West African food? And the thing I found really through writing this book is that there's so much of using vegetables as the core foundation of your flavor. Not to be like, okay, I have a veggie on the side, or we also should have a veggie. But veggie is the primary of how something's gonna be great and delicious. And so for these, it's really that habanero. Because a lot of people are like, oh, I don't like spicy food, should I take it out? But because you have that really nicely sweet pepper, I feel like once I add a habanero to something, it immediately tastes like Nigerian food to me. Doesn't matter what it is. So this is a really simple, but also really flavorful. Just gonna add a little bit of salt. Chef's pinch of salt. Just to pull it all together. And because there's, no eggs in here or anything, I usually give it a little taste, just so I don't make the whole batch to find out that they're a little bland. So give it a taste now. And I feel like we always add a little more salt before getting to fry. So one thing that, while this is heating up, that I really wanted to keep in mind when putting together Africali was the perception folks have about international food. International food, when people hear it, they equate a lot of words, but one of is difficult, complicated. Can I do that? Am I going to be able to find the ingredients? There's so many wonderful African dishes I grew up having, and trust me when I say, my mom, when we go to the grocery store, it's a grocery store around the corner. We're not gonna look, we're not gonna go to 2, 3, 4 grocery stores hunting down ingredients. And we were still able to make really great, but also really traditional dishes. So that was a philosophy when I curated the recipes for Africali. I wanted people who hadn't experienced a lot of these, either Kenyan or Nigerian food, to be able to try it at their home, but be able to look what's in their fridge, look what's in their pantry, or when they go to the next trip to the grocery store, ingredients that are right next to the thing they're already buying, to help make a place that is, we're in California, geographically very far away, but make it feel closer, because once you read the ingredient list, you start having these aha moments. Okay, maybe you've never had an akara before, but when you read these ingredients, lentils, onions, bell pepper, like, okay, I know this, and it's familiar. And I think there's a great power to associating and engaging with other cultures, rooting it in what's familiar. When it comes to culture, a lot of African culture hasn't been seen, and a lot of the media is around like our wildlife, things that are different. We have great exotic animals. And so for a lot of people, the region has felt very distant. And so I was really intentional with this project to go against that distance and help people realize that there is a roster of food that is familiar to you, that is very accessible to you, but also will give you great new ideas to cook the same ingredients you're probably already buying. Because as really that he just spoke about, there's so many ingredients that have circulated their way around the world. A lot of our cooking is more similar than it is different. Now don't get me wrong, there are some ingredients, especially in Nigerian food, that you're gonna be like, okay, this is gonna be a first. And that's also fun and exciting, but with this project, it was really rooted in that accessible, everyday cooking that gives you a sense of, okay, these flavors are new and they're exciting, but you can still do it on a Tuesday night after work. Or in this case, maybe tone down the chili a little bit, and this can be a snack you prepare for your kids and their friends on the weekend. So we're gonna start frying these up. I'm just using a little oil. Now the one thing I will tell you, and this is probably the only part you can go wrong, is if the oil's too hot, they are gonna cook too fast on the outside and then be raw, but they're just being so. Just give it a little test, you know, it's like our first pancake. First one will let us know how we're doing. Light bubbles, we're doing good. And then just like little mounds. And the thing is, they're meant to be rustic. You don't need to mold them or shape them. Just a regular spoon from your drawer and little plops into the oil. And speaking of familiar, akara, as a dish in particular, has made its travels. So it's actually a dish that you'll find through the African diaspora, especially in Brazil, in a dish called acarajé. So imagine this batter made with black-eyed peas. Remove all the herbs, just back to the pink. Fried a little bit bigger. Cooked in palm oil, so bright yellow, split open in half. See, now I'm going to tempt you with something really good that we cannot feed you, and I'm so sorry. But they split them open in half and then put a little sauce and some grilled shrimp. And that is such a popular street food within the Salvador Bahia region, which was the biggest slave port from West Africa into Brazil. Because where people go, whether it's by their choice or not, their food comes with them. And it's such a simple dish that you guys will get to try on Friday, if I'm right. On Friday, someone nod if I'm correct, at the marketplace. So we'll have plenty of these for you to try. But it's a really simple dish that you can make your own. And so that's what I did with this Africali, because I'm always looking for a reason to clear out my vegetable drawer, because I feel so guilty every time I throw away that bundle of parsley. But I knew I tried my best, but I just never have enough things to do with it. So this is a nice, fun little snack where you're really just like foraging in your pantry, looking through the cupboard, and trying to think of like, can I make a meal out of this? And the answer is yes. It's a great snack. We can borrow from our friends over a little bit east and make it into a sandwich, similar to how they do with falafel, because it's very common to eat it between bread. And boom, look how golden. And they're so, I don't know how well you can see this, but they get a little fluffy, and they stay fluffy, and they puff up. And that's just simply from the aeration. So they're really simple, really natural. Use a good oil. I like using avocado oil at home, but also a really nice way to get a taste of West Africa using what's already around you.
And these were actually served at the opening reception.
Do they have, I thought they had the lentil samosas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you guys have the samosas, right? Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
We love a lentil. We love a lentil. We have the lentil samosas served at the reception are also from Africali. Typically the samosas in Kenya are made out of beef, but I wanted to do something different, but also once again make a lazy girl samosa where like, can I invite my friends over without having to go to the grocery store? Because that's the goal, because you have too many things to do when you're hosting. You're cleaning your house, you're cooking, and so I think it's really important to have a great arsenal of recipes with you that you don't have to always go running to the store or 3 or 4 different stores. Flavorful food that is more or less convenient to make. And so these are going to be done once they're golden brown on both sides. The only thing to pay attention to here is if they get dark too fast. Because you can be like, oh, so quick, so easy, they're done. And you tear them open and there's just like goo in the middle. So let them have 2 minutes per side. And then once they come out, you're gonna drain them on some paper towel, just so the excess oil comes off. I guess I have to get all these out there, otherwise they will burn. And I love with this batter, you can still see all the herbs in it. So you have a great idea before you bite into it, what went in there, because they just are nice and suspended at the top. And then, honestly, you can eat these on their own, but this is America, and we love a sauce, and we love a dip. So I do a mango sweet chili. It's very my Sandra Lee semi-homemade moment. buy some store-bought sweet chili, take a fresh mango, you're gonna dice this up, blend it, a little bit of water, because otherwise your blender will not go. And then you're gonna cook it down on the stove top of that store-bought sweet chili, and it'll become this really bright orange, little zhuzhed up mango sweet chili sauce that you can just dip. And I mean, it's the holidays, Thanksgiving, boom, you have it right there. And these are how you make the lentil nuggets. And then I believe this evening at the marketplace, I will be doing a book signing of Africali. So I hope to meet some of you there. And on Friday, we'll have a taste of these. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Keanu. And now we'll welcome Saqib Kaval and Norma Listman.
Hi, all. Well, shit. Before we start, can we give some love to all the amazing CIA staff that are making us look so good and making these demos look so good? And also, Jordan Ezra King and Keanu Moju, like, who's gonna get an Africali cookbook? I got my copy. I feel like I just saw a master class in giving a cooking demo and like a really good explanation of a book. That was badass. We also want to welcome our culinary director, Chef Catalina Londoño Ciro, who makes Masali Mais work.
And who makes us look really good. But
So
who are we?
we are Masali Mais, Masala Mais. I'm Saqib Kaval
Norma Listman.
and Chef Catalina Londoño Ciro. Masali Mais started as a research project and a political project, first and foremost, looking at the migration of cooking techniques, ingredients, and political movements between South Asia, East Africa, and Mexico. There is so much similarities between the way our cultures eat, and basically Norma and I getting to know each other and cooking together got into this deep question of why are our foods so similar, why are our techniques so similar, and why do we have the same cravings and same construction of flavors in our dishes?
So today we're cooking the most popular dish at Masala Mais. We cook river prawns, which are this massive, beautiful Acamaya prawns in Mexico that we're so lucky to get. And they are inspired by the Totonaca culture. The Totonacas were one of the first Mesoamerican civilizations in the Americas. They are known for their mastery of vanilla and vanilla growing. So these shrimp are cooked with vanilla, chile morita. They have ghee to pay homage to his heritage. And they're spicy, they're delicious. We're gonna get started soon, but first, at Masala Mais, we believe that food is political, so we put politics on the table. This dish for us is highly political, and it tells the story of colonization, of white supremacy,
Of patriarchy. This is, like Norma said, one of the most popular dishes at the restaurant, and we are often at the restaurant together, and what happens over and over again is that I am congratulated for the dish. This is Norma's dish. This is Norma researched this dish. Norma created this dish. This is something that she has been working on for so long, and yet I, as the male chef, get all the congratulations. Even here, as we're working in the shared kitchen, all the chefs are coming to me to congratulate me and say, "Oh, chef, it's so great to meet you." Meanwhile, Norma and Cata are actually doing the work, and I'm just flitting around, talking, and looking cute. And yes, I am cute, but this style of patriarchy is so deeply interwoven into our kitchens and to our cultures that it informs how we approach food and how we approach eating together. When I say vanilla, what comes to mind?
Bland.
Sweet? Baked goods? Plain?
What do you think when somebody says, oh, that person is so vanilla?
It's not a compliment. Like, it's...
But why? Vanilla in the Toltec, in the Totonaca culture is known as the black orchid. For those of you who don't know, vanilla comes out of an orchid and it's beautiful. And it's one of the most complex spices we have access to.
Dark, musty, earthy. It's got spice to it. This ingredient is indigenous to Mexico, and yet we think of vanilla as a European ingredient in pastries that taste bland and sweet and white. Let me tell you about how colonization and white supremacy works in the way we approach our food cultures.
But before that, I'm gonna tell you what we're doing. So, here we're warming up the ghee. So we're gonna prepare the ghee with the vanilla vine with the seeds, and then we're gonna save the vines for the chile paste. So Chef Cata is showing us how to clean the vanilla. You open it in the middle, you scrape out all the seeds. They're gonna go into the ghee, and you wanna let that sit for about an hour, so you really are infusing the ghee. Then simultaneously, we're gonna do a little pickle. We're gonna serve this dish. It's a rich dish. It's a very spicy dish. We also like to make our food spicy. We don't dumb it down. We don't whitewash it. We make it the way that we eat it. So we serve it with these pickled beets that are salty and super tart to cut the fat and to cut all of the heat. So we're gonna do that. It's a very simple brine. It's a half and half water to vinegar, salt to sugar, and then toast some spices and put them in there. And the thing about this brine, you don't want it to boil. We have cut the beets super thin. So if you have the water boiling and you have a very hot brine, you'll kind of disintegrate and overcook your beets. So the end result for the beets, it should be really beautiful, paper-like. It's almost like a silk, and you'll achieve that with a warm brine, not a super hot brine. So now, keep telling us, Chef.
This is why Norma's the better chef, because she will actually make the food with very good technique, and I'll just talk a lot. So vanilla went from Mexico and went all over the world and kind of has been, well, colonized and whitewashed, right? How do we get from something as dark and spicy and earthy to something kind of white and bland? Colonization. So the Totonacas first start cultivating vanilla as part of their spiritual practices, but also cultural recipes in 1115. They are conquered by the Aztecs that start introducing vanilla into chocolate. That was the Aztecs. That wasn't the Swiss, that wasn't the French, that wasn't anywhere in Europe. This was the Aztecs creating chocolate cacao with vanilla. The Aztecs then are colonized by the Spaniards. So Hernan Cortez, amongst his many, many terrible attributes, the demon comes to Mexico and starts drinking chocolate with the Aztecs, and he gets introduced to this ingredient. And him, of course, says, there's money here. Colonization is all about creating new markets and creating a hustle. And he's saying, okay, I'm going to make money off of this and take it back to Spain.
Moctezuma gives him vanilla a vanilla
Orchid.
orchid as a gift for him to take to Spain. And Hernan Cortez is thinking like, money signs, like, I'm gonna make money out of this.
Takes it back to Spain, and now vanilla in Spain becomes this incredibly luxurious product.
Because in addition of being delicious, it has a lot of health attribute, but also it's aphrodisiac.
Fast forward. It shouldn't happen as an aphrodisiac. The Spanish are trying to propagate vanilla, and it's not working because colonization, in one of its many failures, it removes culture and history from the ingredient, right? Food is political, like Norma was saying, and we can't remove food from the culture and the knowledge and the history of the civilizations where those ingredients come from. So the Spanish at this time are removing vanilla from the civilization, and now they can't grow it because vanilla can only get propagated by
The Melipona bees. The Melipona bees are this really beautiful, tiny, stingless bees. If you've never had Melipona
honey.
you should. It's one of the most exquisite and beautiful honeys you will ever try, but it's very expensive, it's hard to harvest, and Melipona bees grow only in the coast and south of Mexico. I'm gonna make a pause and just let you know that I'm toasting the spices. I want them to get the aromas out and the oils before they go into the brine, so they're ready and they like release all of that beauty into my brine. Yeah.
So late 16th century, the Spanish are making a lot of money off of importing vanilla from Mexico. The French want to get in on it. Early 17th century, the French are trying to get their own hands on vanilla and start propagating vanilla in their colonies, but again, it's not working because they don't have this indigenous wisdom of Mexico of how the Totonacas created this whole system of cultivating vanilla. It wasn't until 1841 an enslaved African genius, a 12-year-old boy living under slavery, Edmund Albius is his name, he invents the system to propagate vanilla by hand. So imagine if this is a plant that's pollinated by bees, a specific type of bee, this 12-year-old invents the whole system and structure to propagate vanilla by hand very, very carefully. This changes the entire game. Now the French are putting vanilla everywhere, and they're growing it in all of their colonies, and they're creating a whole new market. The Spanish have made money off of this. Now the French are making money off of this. Of course, we know the name of so many chocolate companies, but we don't talk about this 12-year-old boy living under slavery that changed how the world eats. Vanilla gets taken all over the world and is now being in all these French colonies, who are now the greatest growers of vanilla. And these French companies have made the majority of money off of vanilla. Not Mexican companies, not Mexican regions. Keep going. Sorry.
We're gonna stop him for a moment, and we're gonna show you how we're gonna do the paste really quick. So these are morita peppers. They're spicy. If you are very weak, you can take the seeds off.
If you're weak.
You can de-seed them, but if you're not, you're gonna fry them whole. So we want actually the oil to be a little hotter for that. There it goes. So you want your chile, when it goes in, to inflate. You're gonna get both sides. It's very easy to burn dried chiles, and the taste is terrible and bitter. So we don't want that. So once you get it like this, inflate it, and the color changes a little bit, your chiles are ready. So there you go.
You guys should
So
go
Chef
ahead.
Cata is gonna go ahead and fry the chiles. You would fry all of the chiles, but because we're limited on time and we like to talk, we're not gonna fry them all. We have them ready. So you would do the whole bowl, put them in the blender, and then last, you're gonna fry the vine. It has a lot of flavor. We usually don't use it in cooking, and it just imparts a lot of that richness into the dish. Just be careful not to burn it. You're gonna put it with your whole chiles. You're gonna use the oil that you fried your chiles in to blend it into a paste. You're basically making sort of like a salsa macha with vanilla. You're gonna add your salt, make sure it's seasoned well, and set that aside and cool it. You don't wanna put it hot in your shrimp. Chef Cata is gonna demo really quick how we clean the shrimp. It's super simple. We're just gonna take the vein from the back. We like head and tail and skin on our shrimp. We call them camarones pa pelar. Pelar means to peel. We also like to eat with our hands. We feel like it's a lot more delicious than using a knife and a fork. And there's nothing like sucking the flavor from your fingers and from the shells and the heads of the shrimp. Keep going.
The aphrodisiac.
There you go. So now for the beets, I have my brine ready. If you see it's not boiling, it's about to boil. The flavor that it has, I already tasted. It's perfectly balanced between salty, tart, and it has all the spices. I honestly like to do this the day before. I leave the spices in the brine because they're gonna translate into the flavor of your beets. So just make sure that it covers. I don't think I have enough for both of the beets, but this is how it would look like. Just perfectly covered, and then I would seal this, let it rest, and have them ready the next day. Or if you're gonna serve them the same day, I would do this a couple of hours ahead of time. While Chef Cata is cleaning the shrimp, I'm gonna make this florets with the beets. I really like this. I feel like they're very feminine. They are a homage to a chef that I cooked with in the Bay Area a long time ago, Sue Chan, and she taught me how to do a lot of this really beautiful pickling. And then this part, to me, it's just about having fun, making things pretty, because we also eat with our eyes. And yeah, you basically are just putting them into this toothpick and making them look really good. You want to keep going, Chef?
So all of this is happening to vanilla, and this dish, right, tells a story. When we're at Masale Mais, for us, the most important thing is that people are eating the food, but also getting a little bit of the cultural context and the history behind why these foods are on the menu. When we think about food as being political, we're also thinking about how food politics tell the stories of where our people have come from and the histories behind why we eat the way we eat. Knowing our food histories is how we can understand the future of our communities and how we can save our communities and build stronger, more resilient communities. Colonization informs the way we eat, why we eat, and of course, knowing our food histories allows us to take back some of that control and some of that history that's been lost through empire, through theft, through cultural violence.
So now Chef Cata is gonna stuff the shrimp, stuff the ones you have, and then I'm just gonna show them how it's done so we can move on, because we are at the time. This is really quick. Can you pass me a lime, Saki?
Sure.
There you go. So basically, you want to make sure you go inside in the middle, but also in the sides. We have the cast iron super hot. Yeah. Yes. And this is gonna get smoky. Thank you. Okay.
Dale.
I'm gonna take that. So you have your cast iron, you have really hot oil, and you're just gonna cook it for about a minute on each side. I like my shrimp soft and juicy, not super hard and overcooked. This is like very messy. We're gonna put a quarter of lime. No, it goes back in because we want the oils of the skin to go into the dish. Salt, and we're gonna go high for a little bit. Can I have a little plate on this side? There we go. We like to have a little bit of burnt bits next to it to add flavor. And then I'm gonna brush it with some of that vanilla ghee. And then Chef Cata, if you can put some of that morita paste at the bottom, then vanilla ghee. And the idea is that you're gonna peel the shrimp and dunk it into that vanilla with morita and eat it. There you go. Yeah, this is,
Ready.
there you go. I'm gonna just cook this one for you. Yeah, it's very messy. I'm glad we went last.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So, many thanks. Can you hear me? Is this on? Many thanks to Jordan Ezra King, Keanu Moju, and Sakib Kaval and Norma Listman for their presentations. And you may have had Masali Imai's, their Swadera samosas at the reception that were prepared by our CIA culinary staff. And I wanted to just give a shout out to Chef Rebecca, who you see here. If you've been to our conferences here, you know she is killing it in our main stage demos, so we're really grateful to have her. I also just want to say that sometimes we can't get to questions. I know someone had a question for Jordan, but if you see him out and about, please feel free to, yeah, he's up there waving. Please feel free to, he's a very friendly guy, but with any of our chefs, if you have questions, feel free to engage them.
I'm going to show you how to make an elevated version of loaded smashed potatoes. While usually loaded potatoes means sour cream, bacon, and cheddar cheese, this produce-packed dish is much healthier and just as delicious. The smashed potatoes are topped with quick-pickled cherry tomatoes, which will bring a pop of brightness and acidity. In a medium bowl, combine the sugar and vinegar and mix until the sugar is dissolved. Add halved cherry tomatoes to the vinegar mixture and toss to combine. Allow the tomatoes to marinate for about 1 hour. Then drain and reserve these. Next, I'll show you some techniques to make our potatoes extra creamy on the inside and crispy on the outside. Here, I have baby gold potatoes that I've gently boiled in well-salted water until tender and then drained. While they're still hot, slightly crush the potatoes with a fork. Allow them to cool. At service, deep fry the crushed potatoes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit until they're deep golden brown. As you can see, smashing the potatoes makes them perfectly crispy and craggy. Here I have broccoli florets, cauliflower florets, and cremini mushrooms that I've roasted separately until golden brown. We're going to layer these together with our potatoes. Let's put our dish together. Layer the fried smashed potatoes, roasted mushrooms, cauliflower, broccoli, and the pickled tomatoes on a serving plate. Give everything a generous drizzle of Hellmann's spicy mayonnaise for a nice creamy finish. There you have it, a healthier take on loaded potatoes, topped with roasted vegetables, pickled tomatoes, and some spicy mayo. This is a fun entree or shared appetizer.
Like two knights errant, and with great enthusiasm to continue our cheese route, we left La Mancha behind and headed towards our new destination, the unique cheeses. Is that in Europe? Many cheeses are produced that receive that name. Cheeses such as Tatilla cheese, Torta del Casar, Afuega al Pitu, or a unique cheese that is produced in Murcia using unique ingredient Murcia al Vino wine. As Maria Jesus kindly explained to us, to make this delicious cheese, you can only use Murcian Granadian goat's milk and red wine, also from the Murcia region. Once its production is finished, the cheese matures for 45 days until it reaches its incredible creamy texture, its acid flavor, and its intense aroma of wine.
So if you like cheese and wine,
Murcia al Vino is your cheese.
It's a shame you can't be here with us to appreciate this incredible aroma. The good news is that you can find it in the US. And when you try it, you'll understand why it has so many fans on both sides of the Atlantic, including us. Fans forever and ever. Ready to play? Discover the European cheese stories at cheesestories.eu. Funded by the European Union,